Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about overcoming failures. That is what we are thinking about. And we are thinking about that with Roger. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is a thinker. So, we will be thinking about this. So, thank you so much, Roger, for coming onto my show, sharing your time and your perspective with me. Let's dive right in. When you hear the words overcoming failures, what does that make you think about?
It makes me think about how much all of us limit our own potential, how much we hold ourselves back. And
Yes.
that's kind of what I was getting at in the book. I was like, there are these big rocks that we all put in front of ourselves. And is there something we could do to point them out so that people go, you're right, I'm standing behind that rock and I put it there myself.
Right? I know. I think that's about ownership, you know what I mean? We have to own what we have contributed to our circumstances, and a lot of the
Mhm.
time it comes down to our fears. We will literally put boulders, roll them over in front of us and say, "Oh, well, we can't go there. There's a big boulder there." Well, you moved it there. Why don't you just walk around it or just move it? And then you realize it's really not that bad. It's kind of like ripping off that band-aid. We have to just take it as it comes because either way we're looking at something positive or we're looking at something negative, but we will never really know unless we take that step forward into the unknown. So it's just like,
Mhm.
when did you realize that all of this information was valued in a book?
I was at a shopping mall. This book all started. I was walking with my wife through a shopping mall in a very modest part of town. So,
Okay.
not the high-end ones that have the fancy stores, not those. And I was looking at people, and this idea just popped into my head. I was like, well, that person over there is, walking very confidently, they have their hair and their clothes, and they're just looking great. And this person over here looks like they just walked off of a really hard job.
Yeah.
And I got to looking around and going, what is it that holds people back? Why is that person not in the same place as this other person? So we're keep
Yeah.
shopping and we're walking and getting things, and that idea rolled over in my head. And I think by the end of the shopping trip, by the time we walked out, I had these four big boulders in my head. And I said, you know what it is? And I didn't have them in the rude terms that I used in the book, but in the book for, shock value and getting attention, I said, you know what it is? It's some of them are stupid, some of them are lazy, some of them are just ugly people, and some of them are afraid.
Mm.
Now, the initial terms weren't that rude, but later they got recast that way. And from there, I just sat down and started studying more and observing more to get more material behind each one of those. And I
Hmm.
said, that's not, those four boulders aren't the only things that we do wrong or that we put in our own way, but I think those are the four biggest ones. That's how it came about.
No, that's a really interesting because people don't realize just like people watching was a thing. You know what I mean? It
Uh-huh.
was a thing. You used to go to the mall, you used to go to
Yeah.
squares, you used to go to plazas, you used to go anywhere there would be lots of people and you would just watch them and observe them and you would create stories of
Yeah. Yeah.
scenarios. You know what I mean? It was a thing before social media took over our lives and our heads are now on our phones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now we're judging people online versus judging people in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that's a valid point. Just being able to observe, assume, presume, and just consider, like, what is really your reason to just wake up in the morning and decide, you know what, I'm gonna wear pink polka dot pants with orange striped shirts. You know what I mean? Like, why
Yeah.
is that a thing? Why did you decide to do this? You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
do you think that denial has something to play with it as well when it comes to overcoming your failures?
Uh, yes, I think so. Maybe not initially, but after you've been controlled by one for long enough, you don't see it anymore. And you've forgotten what caused you to put on the polka dots with the orange pants and decide that was okay. You've forgotten that. like if I just pick, if I pick the biggest boulder, it's all the biggest boulder, and everybody knows this, is being afraid, afraid to take action. And you've forgotten that you're not doing something that's really valuable and important to you, or really valuable and important to your family or society as a whole. You've forgotten that you're not doing it because you're afraid. And yeah, so I think just not being aware anymore is a big part of why it's you just keep functioning that way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right because sometimes depending on how you grew up and what was your dynamics, your culture, your environment, your religion, whatever it may be in your life, your goals are going to be different. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I've seen people where their parents they've taught their children to not do better than them. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
they're forced to belittle themselves, they're forced to just do whatever. Okay, mom just didn't go to college, well then I guess I'll just finish high school. You know what I mean? They do like
Yeah.
the bare minimum under, you know? So it's just like in that aspect, where do you think that fear is coming from? More so from the parents or from just in life?
Yeah, I think it comes from your parents, probably one of the biggest ones, but also your peers around you.
Oh yeah,
So
that's
when
valid.
I think back to being in high school, I was really blessed that my parents, they did not go to college, and they realized, and but they did it fine. They had a business that they ran, but they realized that not going to college had limited them. So my whole life they pushed me. They didn't care what I did as long as I went to college. That was the big. If they could get me over that hurdle, I'd figure it out from there. But when I look at my friends around me who I grew up with in high school, they're still in that small town doing, literally, I swear, one of them doing the same job he did when he was in high school. So he is the most limited. But most of them are like, well, now I run a business or I'm the manager of the business or something, but I'm still here in this small town. No, I didn't leave. I didn't want to get out. And I don't know if they're what their parents did for them, but my parents pushed me to jump that one hurdle and go figure out what that means for you.
Oh, absolutely. Like, there's nothing wrong coming from a small town because trust me, I've lived in big cities and I lived in small towns, and they both have their advantages and disadvantages. But I think
Hmm.
it's just giving yourself the opportunity to just venture out and exploring what else is out there, what is
Hmm.
what. You know what I mean? Just deciding what is what for you and what it really means for you and what your goals are, and just having that opportunity for yourself to determine that, I think is something that I wish more people can gravitate towards, you know?
Hmm.
So do you think having that optimistic mindset is an advantage when it comes to overcoming your failures?
I think so. While I was in college, I ran into people who were reading and influenced by, positive thinking books and uh, changing your mindset books, which I had never heard of before I got to college. That they just weren't. We were reading fiction and, cop books and stuff like that, watching cop television shows. But I ran into them for the first time and kind of got infected by that. And the more I read about that kind of material, the more I was like, I don't have to think about my limitations. I can think about my possibilities. And that did help me to get started and keep going. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. Because I don't think a lot of people realize, especially from the older generation, they weren't never bestowed that, you know what I mean? That
Hmm.
understanding of that optimistic. Some were either just limited by what they grew up with, or some were like your parents that were like, if you could just do better than me, or if you could just pass this line, then I know that I just did my part, you know? And I think it's beautiful because I think that right there, your parents had that optimistic perspective in a way because they knew that, you know, as long as you just got into college, everything else would be done, you know, everything else would be
Yeah.
clear. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I like, a lot of people, a lot of parents strive for, like, at least if you could just get a job, or at least if you could just get married, or at least if you can have a child, or at least you can, you know, that one, whatever hurdle that is like that would give you that perspective that you need to be a better person or a better human being. And I think that's something that a lot of just people in general just needs to just realize, just like that optimism, oh my goodness, can truly save you. But do you think it sometimes comes down to accountability that brings failures to make it really surreal?
I think if accountable, when you hold yourself accountable, then I think you might be on the path to overcoming some of your failures. When you look at
Mm.
yourself and say, you know what, I'm not just responsible for my own life or my past. I'm responsible for my future and other people's lives. And you start wishing the desire to be something more for a spouse, a partner, for children, for
Yeah.
whoever you've adopted in your life. When you start seeing that I could do something that would really help them, then I think you've got more motivation inside to go, that boulder that's holding me back, I have to move it. Not for myself, but for these other people that I could do something good for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And do you think fear or that paralysis of fear, have you ever had that moment where you were just paralyzed by fear, or have you ever seen it in somebody else where they were just paralyzed by fear?
Yes. So, we all are afraid of something, and I think we all let at least one of our fears turn our path or stop us. For myself, I know one thing that ref I have always refused to do. So this is a bit of a story. So I became rather well known in my profession. I was good at it, and people knew who I was, and they're like, oh yeah, he can handle big jobs and all this." And several times people went, "You should start your own company instead of working for other companies. You have the reputation, you know the people, you would do well." And I always said, "No, I don't want to do that." And part of it was a fear that I had in myself, and I know where that came from. So here's the longer story. It starts with my dad.
Okay.
So my dad, he came from a farm, farming background, and he was in the military, and then he loved the way this is old school. The military uniforms used to be pressed and starched, and they had creases going down the front pockets and the back. He loved
Mm-hmm.
that look. And
Mm-hmm.
so he got into the dry cleaning business where all that pressing and starching got done. And then he had an opportunity to buy a dry cleaners. So he bought one and that became his profession. And he loved it. I wasn't there when he got started, but I was there 10 years later, or 15 years later when I was old enough to watch. He would work 6 days a week. It's his
Mm-hmm.
business. The
Mm-hmm.
business was open 6 days a week. He was always there. On Sunday, he would be in the office doing the books, repairing the machinery, setting up inventory, something. He was always
Yeah.
there. And he loved it. But what I noticed was that the business owned him as much as he owned it. Now, for him, he's like, we're like married. We're in love. This isn't a burden.
Yeah.
So when I thought about starting a business, I said, no, I don't want to be owned by the business the way my dad was. And so I just put that rock of start your own company, sat right in front of me, and I'm like, I'm never moving that rock. No, sorry. And
Yeah.
part of it is fear. I'm sure I could have um, built a company and been proud of it and happy with it and all that. But I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to be a little more free.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's that your perspective was that you were tied to it, that you
Yeah,
were obligated morning from dusk to dawn. You were part, it was a part of you, and you had to sacrifice from sickness to health. You know what I mean? It was
yeah,
basically your marriage, you know what I mean? So yeah, I understand why that is a big thing for you because a lot of people have that same understanding when it comes to being a business owner or being a manager or being a CEO or anything that of a high stature because they realize like it requires a responsibility that they're not willing to take or
yeah,
they're not wanting to step that forward. But even though they have the characteristics, the mannerism, the understanding to how to actually manage it, they don't just because it's like I don't want to actually deal with it. So do you think it actually kind of like hinders you when you do that or do you think time is the only thing that allows you to shift your perspective?
I think it changes you. So it's a trade-off. If you decide to do something like that, you're gaining what that owning your own business gives you, but you're trading off the flexibility that you would have either if you choose to work 9 to 5, 9 to 6, nine, whatever it is, of actually going home and turning off and going, I'm done. I don't have to do this again until the next morning. You lose that flexibility, but you also lose the ability to every few years look at your job and go, I don't want to do this one anymore. So you quit that one and go to a different company, or I don't want to live in this city anymore. I want to live in a different city. So you go find
Yeah.
a job in the different city and move around and live in different places. Which one do you want more?
Right? You really do have to check your values and your morals and see where that stands and see where you're trying to lean towards more and everything. Because it's your life, you know what I mean? We have to live with our lives, and to really overcome our failures, we have to really confront our fears, you know what I mean? We have to
Hmm.
confront the truths and the lies that we believe, and we have to acknowledge what life really means to you and what you're willing to do for it, you know what I mean? Because we only have
Yeah.
one life. We can live many different lives in
Yes.
our lifetime, but we really only have one life. So, do you think that going forward and viewing life, do you think that you still have more ventures and more fears for you to conquer?
I definitely do. Definitely do. That's one of the things that I'm studying now. There's a phase in your life when um, going to work, raising your children, that pretty much shapes everything or most of what you're doing. But then there's a point where you're like, now I have work freedom, whether that means you have a lot more control or you're done, and your children move on, and suddenly the possibilities open up. And you say, what do I want to do with all of this time, all of this energy, all of this spinning brain that I have going on? What do I want to do with all of that has led me more recently, like in the last 3 years, I've started writing fiction novels instead of business books.
Okay.
And that all happened because I had all this freedom and I sat back and said, what is it I want to do but I haven't done yet? And writing fiction was something like I just have to write one. Just have to write one, get it out of my system and try it.
Yes.
And now I've written
Yes.
six because once you do one, you get addicted and you're like, I have more stories. I see you have several stories. I was looking at several of the children's books that you've written. Did you start off thinking, I just want to write one? Or did you start say, no, I got to write a whole library full?
My goal was to write a whole library full, to be honest. My goal was
Yeah,
to start in novels in the fiction era, and then but I wanted to something just out right away because there was so many death happening around me, and I was just like, if I die tomorrow, my novel won't be available, but I can write a children's book and that can be available. You know what I mean? So I was
yeah,
like, you know what, let me start with my children's books. And I did these three, and I'm currently working on my first novel, but I still have another novel that I'm working on as well, and then I'm working on another children's book. So it's like, so I know exactly what you mean. It really is addicting because you realize like, okay, I know where my mistakes were in the beginning. Now I know
hmm,
how to enhance it. Now I know how to perfect it. Now I know how I want the next one. Now I know how to twist and turn and flip and flap and do all these great things, and you create worlds out of nothing and
yeah.
worlds out of lives that you out of a life you experience and what other people have experienced. And it's just it's oh, it's this sense of freedom, you know what I mean, when you write and you let everything out. And oh my goodness, it's just this joy inside that I feel when it comes to writing. So I know exactly what you mean, that it really does become addicting because it's just like, "Ah, I wonder where else this can get me." So yes, my goal is to write 100 children's books and 100 novels, and then once
Yeah.
I'm done, I'm done. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
done. My hat is done. So that's the goal. So I'm not that far in.
And you
But I still have plenty of life to live, so who knows, you know?
and you didn't let either your fears hold you back or what you didn't know yet. I'm sure there was a lot of things you're like, I didn't know that until I actually had to do it to make this book come alive.
Oh, absolutely. One of my biggest things that was holding me back from actually writing was the fact that I didn't think I knew how to write because
Uh-huh.
for me growing up, education wasn't important. Like my mom did not care if we went to school or not, and because my mom was a hot mess in herself with her emotions growing up as a child. So because of that, like if we didn't feel like going to school, we didn't go to school. And if we decided to skip class, then we skip class. You know what I mean? So it's like my grades reflected it, but then when I worked hard and I was like, "I wanna do this for me," I realized, like, I was smart, but then we moved around so much, like, I went to 6 different grade schools, 7
Oh,
different
wow.
middle schools, 3 different high schools, and then I wasn't enrolled in any high school for, like, a whole quarter, you know what I mean? A
Yeah.
whole 3 months I wasn't in school, so it's just like, for me, I after I graduated high school, I was like, am I really smart or did I just cheat my way through? Or you know what I mean? Or did I just glide my way through? So it's just like, I'm gonna do this to prove to myself that I can do it. And I'll get an editor, I'll get whatever I need to help me with the areas that I feel short in. And then I went forward and I did it. And I feel so proud of myself that I even have 3 books. I mean, goodness, I mean
Yeah.
that automatically just makes me feel just proud knowing that if I were to die today, at least I know I have those 3 out and they will keep me immortalized for the years to come, that one day, 5 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, when I'm already gone, my
Hmm.
books will still be alive and my spirit will still be with whoever that reads it because that's what happens with authors, you know what I mean? We become immortalized. Dr. Seuss is still living with us
Yeah.
with every book that he's ever written and every movie that has been transformed from a book, and it's like we don't realize as authors that we really contribute to this world in a different manner than anything else, you know? And so it's just like when I speak to other authors like yourself, I'm like always inspired, and I always hope that other people who are listening and they know that they have a book in them, but they don't know if they should do it. Do it! You should do it.
Right. That's right.
But it sucks to know that time is catching up to us, Roger, because I feel like we could keep on talking about life and just
Good.
everything. But what can be some lasting words that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
Well, I think you opened up with a really good idea there. The fact that most of us are a lot smarter or a lot more powerful or capable than we realize. And
Yeah.
it's not until you try something like you tried to write a book or I tried to write a book that you realize I can actually do this. Regardless, it doesn't matter what my English teacher said or what grade they put on my report card. That doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I'm a grown up, different person now. So
Yes.
if I want to be an author, I could do it. If I wanted to be an athlete, I could do it. So I think everybody should have that same, I should try it, not discount myself and say, well, I can't do that because when I was 15, I was told that I wasn't a good athlete or I wasn't a good writer or I wasn't a good scientist or whatever it is. I think you're a different person now. You can do that.
Exactly. And it gives you this sense of like, wow, I can really do this. Like this type of pride in yourself, knowing that you did it against all odds, against
Yeah.
all the naysayers, against even yourself, because sometimes ourselves can be our biggest enemy sometimes because we
Hmm.
allow all the naysayers to now feed us now that what we now believe is true to ourselves. In reality, it's like, no, we can do it. It's about stepping into the unknown, stepping on that other side of the what if, you know what I mean? But believing in yourself, like, hey, even if I don't have nobody who reads my book, at least I know it's out there. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So it's just like that possibility of just that one person can truly change your life. So yeah, I think those are really, really valid points. And ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this conversation, because how could you not? Please go check out Roger. I have his photo on my website. If you're on there, click on it, go straight to his website. Or if you're listening on audio, or if you're on my YouTube channel, you can find his website in the description so that you can have access to all of his great contacts, all of his great books, so that you can continue on thinking. Because isn't that the point, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, it is. So keep on thinking, y'all. Bye.